Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mark Moss Show, where we talk about the decentralized revolution each and every week. Of course, talking about the way the world is changing. Of course it is, right before our very eyes. As I like to say, the world we're going into is not the world that we're leaving behind. And so we talk about that and we look at it through the lens of politics, finance, and technology, so we can bring things into context of what is going on in the world today. When you look at things in a complex system, if you look at just one piece, you don't really understand the full context of what's going on. So we look at it through that lens. And of course, I try to bring to you some new ways to look at things. And so that's what we're going to discuss this hour. We have a lot to go on. We're going to talk about what in the world is going on with all of these companies going woke, some of them going broke, and how to fix this. We're going to talk about why more and more companies are doing this. We're going to talk about the fight, the pushback that's happening, the fight against it, why companies are doing this, and hint, it's not about the money. They're not trying to make more money doing this. We're going to talk about where this is really coming from, this real push, why they're doing this. We're going to talk about why this idea ultimately fails, how they've completely got it wrong. We're going to talk about the massive opportunity that's being created because of this right now, and then we're going to talk about how you can capitalize on this and change the world at the same time. All right, so lots to cover. So strap in, get ready. Don't miss what we're talking about. Now, if you do miss any of this, don't worry, I got your back. You can catch me on the podcast or on my YouTube channel. Just search the Mark Moss Show on your favorite podcast player, or on YouTube, go to the Market Disruptors YouTube channel. You can watch me and listen to me at the same time. But I want to say just right off the bat, framing this thing up, starting it off, is that I like to consider myself a freedom maximalist. And that means that ultimately I am opting for freedom. That's what I'm trying to optimize for. And because of that, I want to recognize everybody's freedom and everybody's choice and right to choose freedom. And so this isn't about if you like these woke ideologies, that's great. Good for you. Do it. You do you. And I want to do me. And I don't want to force you or anybody else to adopt what I like. And neither do I want to be forced to choose and adopt what you like. It's not about that. This is about each of us working to build the world that we want. So if you're like, Mark, I'm gonna turn you off right now because you're pushing back on woke ideology, no, that's fine. You choose you. Just know that all actions have consequences. And I also want to just let you know that, so right off the bat, I recognize everybody's freedom to choose. And this is the way the world is being shaped up. However, we are not victims. We can actively build the world we want, and I believe there creates massive opportunity in doing so. So I just want to kind of frame that up before we go into this. But of course, I'm sure if you're listening to this channel, most of you already understand how all of these corporations seem to be going woke left and right in front of us. Of course, some of them, have been going woke and going broke. I don't know where that that term first came out. Maybe the first time I kind of remember that was like with Disney, potentially, after they kind of battled Ron DeSantis and he took away their taxpayer status. I'm not exactly sure where that happened. The Disney stock fell to the roof, fell through the floor. So they went woke and then they went broke. And what is woke? I don't even want to define that. But you see that it's happening now more and more and more. Probably the biggest one that kind of hit everybody right between the eyes was, of course, Bud Light. And Bud Light came out, of course, and they hired a man, Dylan Mullaney, I think, that dresses as a woman to be the face of trans activists or whatever. And it made a huge uproar. Lots of people, including, Kid Rock and lots of other well-known, social media influencers, et cetera, have made a big stance with this. Of course, I've talked about it on my show. You've seen other, podcasts and shows, Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro talking about this as well. And it turned out pretty bad for Bud Light, at least from a monetary standpoint. So their stock took a massive hit. Tons and tons of reports coming in from Bud Light distributors everywhere that they can't sell it. Bud Light's been running all kinds of crazy promotions, like literally trying to give it away for free. If you'll just buy some of it, they'll give you even more for free. And they just can't seem to sell it. The stock, depending on what day you're looking at, has lost billions and billions of dollars of market cap because of this. And they were kind of the first ones that really went hard into this, and they paid the price. Now, since then, we've seen lots of other brands jumping in. So you would think, like, well, why is this happening? Because if Bud Light got shamed, by its core audience, if they lost billions of dollars of market cap, if their stock, plummeted, et cetera, they can't even sell their product, why would other companies jump in and do the same thing? Patagonia is running their campaigns doing this. Target, of course, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably seen what Target has been doing, targeting the kids. Chick-fil-A is now coming out really, really hard on this, and even Ford is doing this, which breaks my heart because I drive a Ford Raptor. And so we're seeing more and more doing this, but why? Why would they do this knowing what's going on? Well, that's maybe because you don't understand the actual game that's being played. You're looking at this from a tactical level, like why would Bud Light do this from a tactical level without understanding the strategic level, which is above that. So that's what I want to break down for you. Now, like I said, a lot of people would understand that Bud Light probably did this all wrong. It was a massive misstep. Like, do they not know who their audience is? Do they not know who their customer is? Was it that they hired this middle management? A lot of this goes down to that. They hired this middle management to let them make this decision, and they just didn't read it right. I mean, the people that drink Budweiser has built. My whole life watching Budweiser. They used to run like Super Bowl ads, and it was like their Clydesdale, like the biggest, strongest horses pulling firemen, like red-blooded American advertising. And that's their core audience, the beer drinkers. Now, if you're, an IPA craft brew drinker, maybe that might appeal more to you, but you wouldn't think it would appeal to this, red-blooded American, drinker that they've been cultivating for decades in their brand. So did they just read it wrong? Why would they do that? Well, that's a good question. That's what I want to dig into. We know poll after poll after poll shows that practically the only people in support of this gender ideology are the richest, most educated, and most powerful elites. So if you have an MBA from Harvard or publish think pieces for a living, then maybe it kind of seems normal. But if you're a suburban mom, if you're a domestic light beer drinker, then it probably doesn't appeal to you too much. So they just misread it, right? They didn't understand it. Doesn't appear to be the case because, like I said, now these other brands are coming in. And so I'm here to tell you that this is a lot more than about the money. And I think where it really turned on is, like I said, I'm a freedom advocate. You do you, I do me. The problem, I think, is that a lot of these people have gone way too far. And where they really went too far, I think where it really crossed the line now is where Target jumped in. And Target started pushing this tucking swimsuit. I didn't even know what that was, and I'm afraid to even say that. If you know, you know. If you don't know, don't bother trying to figure out what that is. It's not good. But then they went and took this, queer branded products, Satan Curious, putting Satan on the cover, and they're giving it to kids. Taking this, gender bending striptease to children. And once you go after the kids, you've gone too far. And now I think there's really a big pushback, and the going woke is going broke, and that's coming to a head right now. Now, like I said, if that's what you want, that's what you want. But I want to show you how we can build the world that we want and what we can do about it. Now, as this world goes more and more crazy, we got brands are committing self-sabotage, breaking themselves down, crashing their stock prices. You don't even know what to buy anymore. How do you preserve your purchasing power in a world where debt ceiling has just been lifted and there's no limit in sight anymore? Well, you have to preserve your purchasing power, and one of the best ways to do that, the richest people in the world have done that through real estate. I started my career in real estate. I still invest in real estate, but it's hard. There's a big barrier to entry. How do you get in? And that's why I'm working with a company called raddiversified.com. That's R-A-D, raddiversified.com. And basically, Rad Diversified buys cash flowing real estate all over the country and then lets you democratized access, let you access their lucrative portfolio of investments for only a minimum of $1,000. You don't have to sit on the sidelines watching your hard-earned money disappear. You can get into real estate today without having to come up with all the money, without having to deal with the headaches of that. CEO Dutch Mendenhall has basically made the American dream of owning real estate accessible to everybody with only a minimum of $1,000. You can check him out at raddiversified.com. Again, that's raddiversified.com. You can test the waters and see what difference you can make with only $1,000. Now, disclaimer, all investments involve risk, so consult a financial advisor. Read the prospectus before investing and learn more at raddiversified.com. Why would companies be doing this if they know that they're going broke? Well, it's because they're not doing it for the profits. You think, the problem that you think is that you're thinking tactically and not strategically. So tactically is like, oh, the purpose of a company is to make money. And so all the marketing that they're doing should be to bring them more customers, to bring them more money. I mean, that's the purpose of a business, isn't it? Well, it is. That is the purpose of the business, but they seem to have forgotten that. You see, companies are supposed to be in business, yes, to make money, to increase shareholder value. But what if the shareholders don't care about value? What if the shareholders would be okay losing money in order to push an ideology? And that's exactly what we're seeing happen. So we've talked extensively, if you tune into this show regularly, you know you've heard me talking about ESG, environmental, social, and governance scores. And it's a new ideology, ESG, that are pushing these onto businesses and making them qualify under these three categories and giving them a quantitative score. How many boxes do they check on the environmental, on the social, on the governance side? And so they're doing that. But there's another one that's being pushed as well, and that is now called DEI. And DEI is basically the same thing, which gives them a qualitative score on exactly how they're checking the box in these categories. Now, DEI stands for diversity, equality, and inclusion. And so they have to have these ideologies in. So instead of optimizing for efficiency, rather than optimizing for technological progress, rather than optimizing for customer satisfaction, no. They throw all that away. All the things that would make a company great, again, the purpose of a business is to make money. So they throw all that away and instead grade them on these three core issues, DSI. Now, the reason why this matters is if the company isn't in business to make money, but then rather push ideology, then you understand where this is coming from. The problem is, why would anybody invest in a business, or why would anybody buy or start a business or invest in a business whose purpose wasn't to make money? Why would they do that? Well, it's because the people that own these businesses, the BlackRocks of the world, State Street, Vanguard, own them with your money. So it's your money that goes into your pension or your 401k or your IRA or mutual funds that BlackRock and those guys manage, and they don't care what happens. So they'll put it into these corporations, they'll take over the majority of board seats, and then they'll push this ideology on them, whether they like it or not. Now, we can see that the empire is technically striking back following all of this Bud Light embarrassment. So we can see exactly what happens, right? So Bud Light was kind of the first one to really go hard into this. And they had massive backlash. You've seen the protests all over. We kind of talked about in the first segment. I don't want to go back into that. But basically, they got hammered. Their stock got hammered. They've lost massive billions and billions of dollars off of that. And then they kind of waffled, right? The head of the marketing kind of came out and said, oh, we didn't mean to do that. We thought we were just trying to be more inclusive. And then higher ups at Budweiser kind of started trying to walk it back and said, hey, we really support American values. We didn't really mean to do that. And maybe throw them under the bus. Maybe it was just them down below doing that. And they kind of tried to start walking it back without actually denying it. But they tried to kind of tamper it down. Well, that wasn't good. The USA Today published a leaked letter showing the Human Rights Campaign had informed Anheuser-Busch, quote, that it had suspended its corporate equality index score. So these businesses are now having a scorecard, and they have a corporate equality index score. And because, according to the Human Rights Campaign, because Anheuser-Busch didn't double down on that, because they kind of waffled and just kind of, they did the work. I mean, they sabotaged, they torpedoed their entire business. They wiped billions of dollars off of their investors' stock portfolio, but they didn't continue to double down on it. And because of that, because they waffled, now the Human Rights Campaign, a terrorist organization, informed Anheuser-Busch that it suspended its corporate equality index score. And the brand basically got caught in the middle of a larger war. Remember, it's not a tactical war, it's a strategic war. Got caught in the middle of this larger war that's being fought by global anti-capitalists and the real bosses of capitalism. So the global anti-capitalists that are taking control of these companies and the real bosses of capitalism. Now, who are the real bosses of capitalism? That's you and I. We're the consumers. You see, the global anti-capitalists that have taken control of the businesses think they control the businesses, but they are not the bosses of the business. If you own a small business, you know this. The owner, the boss of a business is the consumer. Now, publicly traded companies should be allowed to go back to serving, again, the real bosses, who are, again, the consumers. But because these people, these global anti-capitalists that have taken control of these publicly traded companies with your money, don't care about the profits, they don't really care what the real bosses have to say. It's kind of messed up, isn't it? So if these Human Rights Campaign type companies have the ability to downgrade companies who fail to dance to their tune in the right way, and don't care about providing capital, care about returning shareholder equity, if all they're going to do is grade companies on how they achieve socially desirable metrics, such as combating climate change, advancing diversity and inclusion, and create a more equitable society, then how do we push back? If we can't push back, if we can't hit them where it hurts in the pocketbook, what do? We can see that there's a battleground being fought here. All right. So we can see there's headlines all over the place. I pulled a couple here. We saw that I saw a headline, states push back against diversity, equity, inclusion in universities. So now this is taking over universities. Now universities have to do this. Now, the one thing I think about is they think about diversity and inclusion. If you think about that, diversity. So diversity means a bunch of different people, but inclusion means everybody's accepted. But by pushing these types of ideologies where everybody's accepted, you're actually excluding certain people, which is kind of weird. When you have to start individually zoning in on a certain type of person, that is the opposite of inclusion. And if we want to have diversity, so we want to load the board, and now we see job offers all the time that, it's only open to women and minorities, well, that's not diversity. So by trying to become more diversive and equal, they're actually becoming less diversive and equal. We saw another headline, Texas to join Florida in banning DEI in higher education. So there we go. Texas and Florida both banning that in higher education. States are pushing back on it being in universities. Another headline, conservatives outraged after Chick-fil-A hires a diversity, equity, and inclusion executive. So Chick-fil-A literally hired somebody just to promote this inside their business. DeSantis, back to Florida. DeSantis blasts the military for going woke and embracing DEI and political ideologies. Uber's DEI chief is on leave after employees lectured on struggles of white women. So all over the place, you can see this in the military DEI, in universities DEI, even Uber DEI, Target DEI. Again, it's not about making money. What they should be lecturing their employees on is how to treat our customers better, how to find out what the customer really wants, how to serve the market better, how to produce better products at better prices, how to become more efficient, all those things. But no, No. That's not the target of what they're doing. But here's where they have this wrong. All right. So Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum are, sitting at the top of this pile, really directing this. Klaus Schwab is pushing something he calls a global public-private partnership. Public-private. We take the public, the governments, and the private, the businesses, and we merge them together. Now, that used to be called fascism, and that was supposed to be a bad thing. When Italy's Mussolini was a fascist, that was a bad thing. They talked about Trump and said he was a fascist, which I don't know where they got that from, but that was a derogatory term. Fascism was a bad thing. That's the definition of fascism, when you take the government and the corporations and you put them together. But if you rebrand it and you call it a public-private partnership, then it's so much better. So it turns out it wasn't the idea of fascism that was bad. It was just the word, I guess. Because if we just rebrand it, now it's good. And so we have this public-private partnership. And so through this, they're taking the public, so that's access to the money, the banks, the BIS, the IMF, the central banks, and then putting that together with the private, the businesses, and forcing them to do their bidding, change their ideology or push their ideology, regardless of what happens with the profits. But the problem is, again, these people making these rules are so far removed from reality that they just don't understand how the world works. That's the problem. They don't understand how the world works. And again, how the world works is that we must provide a good or a service to the market that solves their problems and their pain. Today you'll see, AOC and the people on the left tell you that these rich people, these greedy people, they're so greedy, they only got rich by stealing from you. That's not the case. The case is that businesses are there to be servants to the marketplace. The purpose of a business is to literally be a servant. My goal is to, as a business owner, is to serve the needs of my customers. If I don't serve their needs, why would they do business with me? So they don't understand how that works. Now, I guess if they create monopolies, which of course is what they want to do, get rid of all the small mom and pops, consolidate all the businesses down to a few key conglomerates, and then create a moat so nobody can come and challenge them, then we can force people to do business with us because they have no other choice. But again, we always have a choice. We're humans. We're not victims. We have the power. Now, as Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises pointed out, if you don't know who Ludwig von Mises is, you should. I talk about him very often. Austrian School of Economics is a different way of looking at economics, and it's based off of human action. So it takes into consideration that humans act, and we act based off of our motivations, and then you can draw all the types of economics theory off of that. But Ludwig von Mises basically says that people have it wrong. He says that consumers are the true bosses in a capitalist system. They ultimately decide what products are created and purchased, and who becomes wealthy and who becomes poor. The consumers decide that. But here's the key piece. Consumers are the true bosses in a capitalist system. That would be a free market system. Now, that's a big piece, because if we're not in a capitalist system, then that doesn't necessarily hold true. Then that means that if we move to a stakeholder capitalist system, like the World Economic Forum is pushing, or more of a, that's a rebranded term. If we go back to a socialist type system, then all of a sudden it's not capitalism anymore, and now the consumer doesn't hold the power because, again, now we've consolidated power down to a few key players, and the consumer doesn't have a choice anymore, which is why this is economic fascism. That's what stakeholder capitalism is. It's economic fascism. But Ludwig von Mises explained that even that will fail because the consumer is the captain of the economic ship. He says, quote, "The real bosses in the capitalist system of market economy are the consumers. They, by their buying and by their abstention from buying, so either what I buy or what I don't buy, by either buying or not buying, I, the consumer, decides who should own the capital and run the plants. They determine what should be produced and in what quantity and quality. If we want vanilla ice cream and we buy vanilla ice cream, more vanilla ice cream gets purchased. Their attitudes result in either a profit or in a loss for their enterpriser. They make poor men rich and rich men poor, the consumer. They are no easy bosses. They are full of whims and fancies. Consumers, we change all the time. They do not care or wit for past merit. As soon as something is offered to them that they like better or is cheaper, they will desert the old producer and go to the new one. Nothing counts more than their own satisfaction. Consumers don't buy what they used to buy. They buy what they want. But that's in a free market. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how to preserve this. We're going to talk about the massive opportunity that sits in front of us right now as entrepreneurs and how we can change the world. We, the people, the consumers, also are the ones that buy the stock. So we are the captains of not only the ship by being a consumer, we're also the captain because we're also the owners. The problem is that what you've done is you've relegated your ownership role. So rather than you managing your own future, rather than you managing your own money, your own savings, your retirement, and saying, well, I want to build the world that I want. So let me back it up. Let's say that you bought a company. You invested in your friend's business. And your friend's business said, my business is to go push these ideologies and sell tucking swimsuits for kids and to put Satan on t-shirts. Would you invest into that company? Now, yes or no. But if the answer is no, well, then you shouldn't allow any of your investment dollars to go into those types of companies. But if you've relegated your investment decisions to the BlackRocks, the State Streets, the Vanguards, then that's exactly what's happening. They've taken your money and put it into those businesses, and even worse than them using your money to go against your ideology, even worse than that, they're doing that without regard to profit. So you give them your money, and they have a fiduciary duty to get you the highest return they possibly can. But how are they making decisions that are literally going against making profit? So one, they're failing their fiduciary duty for you. Number one, that's a legal problem. Hopefully we'll see some class action lawsuits pop up from that. But number two, you've relegated your decision. Hey, BlackRock, you just invest my money for me. And then they go weaponize it against you, and it underperforms. Because you're lazy, because you don't want to manage on your own, you don't want to take the time to figure out how to do that. You've put all this time into making money. So you went to school, probably university, you paid off student loan debt. You really work hard in your job to make as much money as you can, and then you make the money, and then you just give it away to somebody to use it against you. If you were investing in your own business or investing into your buddy's business, you wouldn't invest into a business that did that, but yet you are at the same time. So it starts with us, one, taking the power back of where we put our investments. So you shouldn't be giving your money to people who are going to weaponize it against you. So number one, where is your money? Are you in control? Are you using it to build the world that you want, or are you just giving it to these companies and letting them do whatever they want? So that's number one. Then number two, am I buying from these companies? So one, am I owning these companies that are pushing this ideology? And two, am I supporting these businesses that are pushing this ideology? Now, the problem is, as more and more and more of these businesses jump in, it starts to greatly limit our choices. I said in the beginning, like my wife got all fired up, and she called Target, and she canceled the Target credit card, and she canceled her Target loyalty program, and she made sure to tell them why she was canceling, that they could make a record of it. And I guess we're not shopping at Target. Well, I don't shop at Target, but I guess my family, my wife does the shopping. But I guess we're not, as a family, shopping at Target anymore. But what happens when we continue to get our choices whittled down? Like, what do we do? Do we just boycott everything? Do we just start making our own clothes and making our own food at home? Like I said, I saw Ford ran an ad with a rainbow-colored Ford truck. Well, I drive a Ford Raptor. I don't really want to sell it. So what do we do? Well, this is where the opportunity comes in. So if you're an entrepreneur, or you'd like to be an entrepreneur, if you'd like to be responsible to build the world that you want, if you're tired of being a victim, why be a victim? Too many people I see, I get 5,000 comments a week across my social media, emails, et cetera, and I see other people, what do we do? I'm a victim. Well, I'll just go in a hole and die. No. We have the power. So here's the opportunity. If you could go create businesses that could counter this, then we can change the world. So if I don't have any options left, everybody went woke. What do I do? Where do I put my money? Well, that's the opportunity that an entrepreneur could step up and provide the counter to that. So, for example, Bud Light started running this, pro-trans ad campaign. Well, I don't want to buy Bud Light anymore. So what beer do I buy? Well, nobody stood up to be the opposite of that. So what if a beer company stood up to say, we're the opposite of that? We support traditional roles, traditional families. We support American ideals. Well, then my dollars that I don't want to give to Bud Light anymore, I can move over to there. But no entrepreneur stepped up to do that. Now, there are people doing this. So we can look at coffee, like Black Rifle Coffee, for example. They've stepped up and they provide coffee, just a very boring product, coffee, but it's for Second Amendment rights and for veterans. We see Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire's company, they were sponsored by Harry's Razors. And Ben Shapiro said that boys can't get pregnant, and Harry's Razors got very mad at them and threatened to cancel their sponsorship. And so they created a competitor, Harry's Razors, called Jeremy's Razors. And now they have an alternative for people to give their dollars to. If you don't want to support Harry's, and you don't want to support companies who are mad that boys can't get pregnant, then you have now a choice to go to Harry's. And now they spun off a chocolate company, which is now competing against Hershey's. And so there's this massive blue ocean where you could literally go get any product out there and just position it to be the opposite of these businesses that are going woke. So as an entrepreneur, or if you'd like to be an entrepreneur, there's basically a wide open market. You can go get any product that you want and position it for these values-based buyers. And that's a massive opportunity. The business market is very crowded. A lot of times as I'm coaching people through business, they say, oh, but the market's too crowded. There's too much competition, which first of all isn't a big problem. But, they think the market's too crowded. Like, how would you go start a coffee company today? I mean, I go to the grocery store, there's like 80 coffee companies there. But if you position it to these value-based buyers, it's a completely blue ocean. That's a massive opportunity. And then number two, as consumers, we must vote with our money, and we must go support these types of businesses. So think about where you're putting your money. Don't try your best not to give it to businesses that are against what you want, and instead give it to businesses who are for what you want. So if we had one business that was pro-transitioning children and one that was against transitioning children, then it would allow the market to vote on that. So, hey, if you really want to transition kids, then fine, go give your money to those businesses. And if you don't, then give your money to the other businesses. Now, of course, businesses could just stay out of this altogether, which is what would be preferable. But if they can't, because they're being forced into this because of the DEI and the ESG narratives. Anyway, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Mark Moss Show. Hopefully that brings you some hope. You don't have to be a victim. You can build the world that you want, and there's massive opportunity right in front of you if you do. We've been talking about this. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. Hit me up on social media @OneMarkMoss. Let me know what you think. Send me a message, and that's what I got. Thanks so much for listening.